Hi, my name's Adam Cole and this is Down to Earth's Garden to Table series. Today we're going to be mixing in last winter's cover crop into a bed and doing a little bit of bed prep with some rock phosphate and oyster shell. So today we're here at bed 21 of the Common Ground Garden. Common Ground Community Garden has been kind enough to let Down to Earth have a site for us to do some testing, plant some tomatoes and peppers this year. And our first task is to take last winter's cover crop, this is Austrian field pea, and chop it and mix it into the soil. Now people plant cover crop primarily to protect the soil over the winter, and there are some other secondary benefits as well. It protects the soil from wind and rain erosion. That's the primary benefit. But some cover crops, like this Austrian field pea, are nitrogen fixers. So they pull atmospheric nitrogen out of the air and fix it into a plant usable form in the soil. Another really beneficial thing they do is just add biomatter. When this breaks down in the soil, it becomes, it can basically compost in the ground, become more organic matter in the soil, which eventually will improve the bed. It's springtime now and we want to get ready for planting, let the bed warm up. So we're going to take this cover off, I'm going to chop it, and then we're going to chop it really small and mix it into the soil. There are a couple other ways you can do this. Sometimes what I'll do is just shear it off, like shave it down to stubble, and then take all this top growth and throw it in a compost pile. That lets the bed warm up a little bit faster, but it requires that you then mix in the finished compost later to add that organic matter. But today we're just going to chop it up and mix it directly into the soil. Cover crops are really a great tactic, especially if you live in a rainy or windy location. But really any time over the winter, it's best to cover a bed, and cover crops are a great option for doing that. Well, I hope you can hear me. As you can probably hear in the background, this is a great day to be out gardening, and there are other people working in their yards as well. I believe that's a weed eater, but we'll continue on. I'm done chopping this and put it in a pile, and now I'm going to put this tool away. This is a little sickle. Important to clean your tools, and I'm just going to wipe it on the back of my glove and put it back in its sheath. Especially sharp tools, it's nice to keep them in good shape, so make sure you clean them before you put them away. Now we're going to take this pile, we're going to take a machete. You could also use a shovel or any other blade, and then we're just really going to beat at this until there's lots of small chunks. Small chunks, of course, are going to break down more quickly in your soil. You're going to be bruising them and causing some damage, and that helps the microbes in the soil get into them more quickly. And then once they're into much smaller pieces, we are going to mix it into the soil. So when you decide you want to cut down your cover crop and mix it into the soil, one thing to really pay attention to is the moisture level of the soil. You want the soil to be dried out enough that it's a crumbly texture. You don't want it to be dry, full summer dry, but you want some moisture to it, but you want it to give as well. If you work it when it's too wet, you're going to have compaction in the soil, and that's exactly why we're growing the cover crop, to avoid that. Another thing to keep in mind is when you are chopping this up with a machete or a shovel, be careful because you can really hurt yourself with a sharp blade. Important to wear good shoes just in case you nick yourself, and just keep aware at all times so that you don't hurt yourself in this process. So now that we have it all chopped up, we're going to rake it out over the surface of the bed. Then we're going to apply a little bit of rock phosphate and oyster shell. Rock phosphate is a great source of slow-release phosphorus and about 20% calcium. Oyster shell is also a source of calcium, and since we're going to be doing tomatoes and peppers in this bed, I'm going to add a little bit more beyond what the rock phosphate offers, just to prevent problems like blossom end rot. We'll sprinkle that over the top of the chopped up material, and then we'll take digging forks and we'll mix it into the top 4 to 6 inches of soil. A cover crop functions by being planted in the fall and then growing up densely and thickly over the soil to protect it from rain and wind erosion. It also keeps animals and people from walking through it once there's a heavy presence of plants there. Plants that are generally used for cover crops are grains like wheat, oats, and rye, depending on where you're located and what your soil is like. Also legumes like Austrian field pea, which we have here, fava beans, vetch, crimson clover. Again, depending on your situation, you may choose different ones or to mix them. So both rock phosphate and the oyster shell flour will become more available as they're assimilated by the biology in the soil, and that can take a number of weeks. Also, the material itself that we mixed in will probably take 3 to 4 weeks to break down as well. It depends on the temperature and how succulent the material is. Austrian field pea is very succulent, kind of soft material, so it'll break down pretty quickly. Once we're ready to plant into there, we will, in a number of weeks, just plant directly into the bed. May add a little more fertilizer at that time, but by that point, both the phosphorus and calcium will be available to the plants. Thank you for watching Down to Earth's Garden to Table series. If you've liked this video, make sure and check us out at downtoearthfertilizer.com, and be sure to like us on Facebook and YouTube.